can't hear anything. Are you trying to talk?
Yeah. Sorry, we should be live now on all platforms. I'm just going to make sure. If you can hear us on Facebook, hit 1 on the chat, and if you can hear us on YouTube, hit 2 on the chat, just to help us know that we're live. So I do believe we're live on both platforms. Amazing. Okay, so we've got a very good show for you today. I have one of the most interesting guests I think we've had in a long time. So for those that don't know, this is the Israel Advocacy Movement. I'm Joseph, the founder of the movement. And every day I get messages in our DMs. Usually it's death threats from your local extremists. But sometimes I get unusual messages. And Mahmoud is one of those individuals. On a daily basis, he will send me videos of what he believes is happening between Israelis and Palestinians. Now, one of the interesting things about Mahmoud is he's a Canadian Palestinian, but he has no hatred for the Jews. In fact, Mahmoud told me that he has ancestors far, far back, going back centuries, who were Jewish. So both myself and Mahmoud believe we have a claim to the land. And Mahmoud is of the mind that, at least from the conversations we've had, that Jews are good and Zionists are bad. Now, I see myself as a Jewish Zionist, so naturally I'd like to talk to Mahmoud about it. And so this is going to be a conversation. It's going to be a very civil conversation. It's not going to be a fiery debate where we're both at each other's throats. Hopefully, it will be a very constructive conversation, and he will help me to see things from his perspective. And hopefully, I will help him see things from the Zionist perspective. So it's going to be an interesting conversation. So sit back, get yourself a cup of tea, a coffee, and enjoy the conversation. So, Mahmoud, first, just quickly over to you. Tell me, why did you start messaging the Israel Advocacy Movement?
Hello, brother Yusuf. Brother in humanity, brother in understanding. Hopefully, in common common grounds. Hopefully, that we will reach. Um, I'm originally Palestinian. Before that, originally Sephardic Jew ancestry. We all go back to the same human species, back to Prophet Adam. Or I've been always supportive for my like grandparents, where they originally come from. We come from Jaffa, uh, Palestinians from Jaffa. Obviously, they've been exiled. They've been to Lebanon. They've been to eventually Europe and Canada. Uh, so I, I I try to send. I always try to understand the other side of my opinions, not standing with any bias to my beliefs. So if that makes sense to you. Uh,
No,
so
absolutely.
yeah, I saw you in. I met you in person in Hyde Park. I saw you in person in Hyde Park. Saw some Islamic activities on YouTube, and you know, I didn't mind joining the debate. So that's where I found your page on Instagram and tried to comment. I don't know if you remember. I commented on some just here. That's where it led me.
Amazing. And so, what I'd like there to begin with is I think it's really interesting that you are both Jewish and Palestinian, because the Jewish and Muslim, let's say, your ancestors apostated from the from the Dean of
Uh,
Judaism,
it's not
and
really. It's that's not how we really look at it. But okay,
from
yours,
a
I
Jewish
assume.
perspective, it's how we look at it. Yeah, you're not just so to begin with. I say you're not just my brother in humanity. You're my brother in descent. We both descend from the prophet Jacob, Yaakov alayhi salam.
True.
Um, And
alayhi salam.
I think so. Many of the people in the chat are screaming, "There's no such thing as a Palestinian." Ignore your labels. This Mahmoud has a claim to the land. Not only has he lived there as a Muslim and as an Arab, but also at some point he lived there as a Jew, that had fled from Spain from the
Oh,
Inquisition.
sorry.
And
Yeah.
before he fled from the Inquisition, his family would have originally came from Israel. So if any Palestinian can understand the necessity for a Jewish state and the claim for a Jewish state, I would imagine it's you, Mahmoud, because you are of
It's.
Jewish descent.
I believe it's all of us. Every human being has the right of believing, and it's a place where it unites everybody. It unites Muslims, Christians, and Jews. It's a holy place, and whoever believes in God and the oneness of God can believe owns. Uh, God owns us. You know, we don't own anything in this world. We're leaving empty-handed. If you look at it in a logical perspective, we don't own Jerusalem. We own our deeds. That's the only thing we own in this life. Uh,
And
that's sorry for
as a
interrupting.
Muslim or as a Jew, or not as a Jew, as a Muslim of Jewish descent, do you accept that the Jewish claim that the Jews they became a nation in that land?
Uh, I believe they became a nation during the time of Bani Israel.
Yeah.
That's where they originally come from. It's in the Quran. It's in the Bible. It's in the Torah. But um, there's a lot of mixes. We can be all Banu Israel. We can be all uh, Canaanites. We can be all, where history is long ago. What happened after that, we had integrated and we had been mixed up. And so we can't legit, legitimately have, based on our religious belief, to be called a nation. Because I don't know, I believe we're all one nation, if you want to look at it in a broad perspective. As a Muslim, I believe there was Banu Israel, and I believe
Okay.
Christians do too. However, what's happening today, I uh, I can't believe that this is the Banu Israel that was then are the same ones that are today, that are existent today. That's the my point of view.
You can't believe you can't believe because you don't like what you perceive to be happening, or you don't believe it's the same people.
We've always learned in Quran and the Banu Israel were the victims. They had the right. They've always had the the first scriptures. Uh, they had Prophet Moses and David, peace be upon them, that were like uh, being victimized by their own belief and by their own weaknesses. They were viewed by the Goliath people and you know as the victims. However, today we don't see that. We see I see it personally that how David threw the rock against Goliath. I see the Palestinian being David and throwing the rocks at. That's my point of view.
So and
So
that's perfect. So let's jump into that because
right,
how many Muslims are there in the world?
2 billion now,
2 billion. How many Jews are there?
1.8 million, 18
No, it's
million.
more than
Sorry,
that. It's more than that. It's around 15 to
18
16
million.
million. Yeah. So
18 million.
there's very, very, very few Jews and a
I agree.
huge number of Muslims.
No,
The
I agree.
overwhelming majority of Muslims in the world want and pray for the destruction of the Jewish state. Would you say that's fair?
Of course, it's not. There's no such thing. That claim that you claimed, speaking on the righteous side of Muslims, nobody wants that to any religion,
So
even
it's
the
not
worst.
not the destruction of the Jewish people. Sorry, I want to be really clear because I don't want you to
Right.
misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm saying they pray for Israel to stop being a Jewish state and to be Palestine. Would you say that's a fair thing to say? Most Muslims want Israel to be Palestine.
So to be honest with you, speaking as like as a Muslim, viewing Israel to be the state for the Jews, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if I look at Palestinians, they have always lived with the Christians and they've always lived with Jews. Although there was historical problems between the Jews and Muslims, I don't deny that. However, as Muslims, like in general, we should see it as we're all Abrahamic faith. We should live with each other. I mean, until today, Muslim scholars they look at the people of the book as, for example, if they have a ruling inside the Islamic faith, if they can't find a correct ruling, they go to the people of the book. That's why they're called people of the book. So we still believe in the Torah and the Injil in its original form that works with how Islam, the Quran is Al Furqan. So that's my point of view
Okay, so I think
from the.
I'll come back to each one of those like in its original form. There's a few things I'd like to pick up, but I think what I'm trying to
Right.
get to is that most Muslims in the world don't recognize Israel as a Jewish state, and they believe it should be under the Palestinians, and they believe that the Jews should live under, as you described it, al-Kitab, they're the people of the book, a protected minority. And you
Exactly.
said the Jews are supposed to be a minority. The Jews are supposed to be vulnerable. You're
No,
supposed to be
no, no,
victims. And
not
I'm
necessarily. No.
okay, okay. So I don't want to draw man you, so I'll take that back. But I think basically you've framed the Jew that everybody loves. The Jew that the world loves is the weak Jew, the vulnerable Jew, the Jew of Auschwitz, the Jew of the Inquisition, the persecuted Jew, the downtrodden Jew, the weak Jew. And that's what the world loves because then they can open up their arms to us and pile
That's
sympathy on us. But today,
that's what
we
the
are.
devil wants. That's what the devil wants. The devil wants to. For me, I see the vulnerable much stronger in front of God than the oppressor. And I don't know if you understand that. If even if it was a Muslim who was a tyrant against a weak Muslim, a logical sense we would stand by the weaker, righteous person. I agree there was Jews that were discriminated and killed in a harsh way. We all stand against that, like a human way would do. But if we're gonna go against humanity and kill just based on a religious sectarianism, I don't know how you want to say that. Uh, we're not humans anymore. We're going to a lifestyle of animals because God gave us the Ten Commandments. Those shall not kill, right?
So again, so I just want to. What I think is really important here is let's contextualize things. So I'll finish my previous thought in that the Jews are not victims today. Today we fight back, and so when
And the
so when people rise up to attack us, we will do everything that we can to ensure the survival of our people because enough is enough. For 2,000 years, we've been under the boot of others, and be it Muslim caliphates, be it Christian kingdoms, or be it modern nation states, they've oppressed us, and we have been unable to depend on them for our security. So today, we've taken matters into our own hands and we've returned to our ancestral homeland. And now, when they rise up to kill us, we fight back and we're not dependent on anyone else for that security. And unlike how you framed it, where it's Israelis versus the Palestinians. It's not. When Israel's been invaded, it's been invaded by nation states, by Iraq, by Jordan, by Syria, by Lebanon. It's by Egypt's mighty armies have come, who've been militarized and armed by European superpowers like the British. And we've crushed those invading armies, repelled them, and retained and secured our borders. But do not mistake this as being an Israeli Palestinian conflict. It is not, unfortunately. It is an
It's an Islamic.
Israeli, yes,
It's
yes,
an
it's
Islamic
Islamic,
conflict.
yes. And
Well,
sorry, go on.
I don't see it that way because you haven't seen the power of the Islamic nation. Because whatever you've seen was a period of fighting between. You can't say that all the Egyptian army and all its might have been attacking Israel. And until today, it's been stopped. And before that, it hasn't gone on. Israel had long settled in Palestine, and
Because
then
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Hashem, because the creator has willed it that
Al
way.
Azim,
The
right?
creator has willed it that the Jewish people return to our land. The creator has willed it that we repel these Arab armies and that the Ummah remains divided. That's all for a reason. And today something miraculous, truly miraculous, is happening amongst the Muslims, amongst the Ummah. There are more and more Muslims coming to support and love the Jewish people and the Jewish state. I might,
Because, brother, Joseph, it has always been that way. We've always been welcoming. We've always
I would say
been
not
peaceful.
always,
Uh,
sometimes.
no, no. To be honest with you, it's part of our faith and traditions, and it can be like the same way. However, uh, there are issues, major issues. It's not an Islamic issue. We never saw it as an Islamic issue. When can it be an Islamic issue? When the Masjid al-Aqsa or Qubbat al-Sakhra, we see those as the issues. Because Jerusalem is not only it's for Muslim, it's also for all the faith. Okay, anybody, we see it that way. This is Salah ad-Din, what he said. It's the unity for all the faith.
So, so what I would say, the only place there is unity amongst the faith is under Israeli sovereignty. Under the Palestinian Authority, there is no unity. There is division and conflict. The Jews are banned from being citizens of the Palestinian Authority. The Jews, if they enter Palestinian areas, are likely to get lynched. They're likely to get killed. If a Palestinian Arab sells their house to a Jew, that Palestinian Arab is likely to get lynched. Um, it's all good and well
Uh,
saying,
when
you don't
when
think that?
when the when the first settlers of Jews that came to Palestine, many of them had bought lands from the Palestinians, but when it started getting overly, they found it to be an occupation because they're buying lands nonstop with the and there was fightings. That's how it started, but it was
It's,
it started becoming a forced occupation. That's how
so,
it
so
began. But
how do you explain this then? How do you explain that there are 2 million Muslims, or 2 million Arabs, sorry, that live in Israel as citizens with full equality? They have representation in the Knesset, in the parliament. They have judges, the best performing, oh, my camera's playing up, apologies. The best performing group in religion are Christian Arabs. How do you explain all these successes and then contrast that to the Palestinian Authority, where the Jews were ethnically cleansed and no Jews remain in Palestinian areas? Like, it's all good and like, if
okay,
okay, continue.
do you see that the Jews were? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that the Jews were killed and exterminated by the Muslim world in the beginning?
In
Were
some
they
of the
responsible
Khulafa,
for Auschwitz?
in some of the Khulafa, so really depend on the caliphate. So different Muslim empires and different Muslim rulers treated the Jews to differing
I
degrees.
mean,
The Jews were always a second-class citizen in the
no,
Khulafa.
not really, not really.
So I'll give
They
you an
can be.
example. Like you're a religious Muslim. If in Israel they had a tax which was just for Muslims, and that tax was paid, and it was only the money that was raised only went to the Jews, yeah. And
Hmm.
so the Jews taxed the Muslims a tax, and that tax went to the Jews and not the Muslims. And not only did the Jews tax them this tax, they taxed them this tax so that they would be humbled and subdued. So the Jew was
Really,
taxing the Muslim to subdue them. Would you say that
that's
would
not
be fair?
that's not how it is.
I mean,
Basically,
that
I am a Muslim. Let me tell you how it
okay,
is.
please.
I'm a Muslim today, right? And I'm a ruler, and I want everybody to be taxed because we have a military. We have to protect ourselves. We have things to for the state to be built. And I come to the Muslim and I tell him, brother, you have to pay zakah, 2 point blah 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 blah, what's the amount is, to the government. Okay. And he says, okay, it's halal, it's okay, it says in the Quran, it's fine, I'll do it. I come to the Christian, I'm not gonna say Jew now, I'll say Christian. I'll tell him, hey brother, there's people there, everybody has to pay tax, everyone has to contribute with the build of the government and things like that. And this Christian the first thing he said, wait, I'm not a Muslim, why you have to make me pay? I'll tell him this is how the ruling is. This is it's a Islamic blah blah blah. This is how everyone is doing. And he's telling me, no, I'm not a Bahada. I'm not a I'm not a Muslim. I should not do that. Well, this is a ruling where you have to pay. What's it called? Uh, how do you say that?
But how do you,
It's like a tax for the non-Muslim.
for the non-Muslim, we can just
Yeah,
call it jizya.
jizya, jizya. That's the one. Yeah, I've been trying to look for that word. So you have to pay jizya. If you're not a Muslim, you have to pay jizya. It's going to be an amount of blah blah blah. This is the amount.
If
Each
that's
state,
what the
each.
if if that's what the Quran said, I'd say that's fine. If there was a
This is
tax
how
in
it
the
is, man.
UK, in the UK, where I'm based, I'm sure it's the same in Canada where you are. The
Hmm.
tax rate is flat. If you're a Muslim or a Jew, you pay the same tax. And neither of you are paying the tax to be subdued or humiliated or humbled. You're paying that
Exactly.
tax to contribute to to keep the society going, to pay for all the infrastructure, government, the military, the police, that's for all of our benefit. That's not why
Agreed.
the Quran says the jizya is paid, and that certainly wasn't how it was applied in the different
This is
khulafa.
this is how it is, man. This is how it is.
So
You'll
the
find
Quran
people that
says
tells you otherwise.
in no, it's not people, it's the Quran. So I don't judge Islam by Muslims. I judge Islam by the Quran and by the Hadith, because that's
Perfect. That's how you should do it. Yeah.
yeah.
Not
And
not
so
all the hadith even. There are
yeah,
some.
only
There are
those that are authentic. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
okay. Yeah.
Sahih. Um, so what I would say, if you open up your Quran, and you probably memorized it. I know very little of the Quran. I've read
I
it a few
memorize some
times.
of it. I can't. Yeah.
But 929, verse 929. So chapter 9, verse 29. You'll find that it says it tells us exactly why I'll read it out. Just so you know that I'm
If you
not.
can. So I have the Quran and I know the Quran in Arabic. I wouldn't remember them how it's like the numbers in English.
Yeah.
The
So
only
it's in At-Tawbah and 29. Fight
Al
those who do
Tawbah.
not believe. Yeah. Fight those who do
Mm-hmm.
not believe in Allah and the last day. Nor so it's saying fight those that don't believe in God and the last day, nor comply with what Allah and His Messenger have forbidden. So they don't comply with what Muhammad says, nor
What verse
embrace
is that?
29.
29. Have you read the third one? Read
Um,
the third one and the same one.
okay, we'll do this and then we'll go back. So I think it's good for my audience to hear the positive
Because
stuff.
you know what, you know why, sorry brother Yusuf, but this is not how, like, it's like watching a movie and half of it you'll see the two guys fighting and one of them get kills. You can never see who's the bad guy and the good guy. This is how it is.
Okay, I
So
tell you
you
what,
have to see,
we'll do that, and I'll
you have
share the screen so the audience can see as well.
right. So
Um,
read it till the first beginning till 3 and check how the verse begins,
right.
because I'm sure that doesn't really mean the Jews or those who knew the God's message, who believe in it, yet they go against it. That's that what the verse says.
So you're saying that from
So it
October,
doesn't mean
from
Surah
verse 3.
At-Tawbah
So this is verse 3.
3.
A declaration from Allah and His Messenger is made to all people on the day of the greater pilgrimage, that Allah and His messengers are free of the polytheists. So if you pagans repent, it will be better for you. But if you turn away, then know you will have no escape from Allah, and give good news, O Prophet, to the disbelievers of a painful punishment.
So that's for the pagans and
Yes,
for
that's for the
the
pagans.
polytheists.
And so now this
Okay.
is for the Al Kitab, the people of the book. So we're going to scroll
Ahlul
down to
Kitab.
929, which it says, here we go. Fight those who do not believe in Allah and the last day, nor
Hmm.
comply with what Allah and His Messenger have forbidden, nor embrace the religion of truth from among those who were given the scripture. So, nor embrace Islam from those who were given the scripture until they pay the jizya, willingly submitted and fully humbled.
صاغرون.
Sagirun. And so that's the
Hmm.
that's basically all I need to show. That the reason I was bringing that up
I mean,
is that
Palestinian Arabs today in Israel, don't they pay taxes?
this is my point. So
All right.
imagine that Israel was levying a Muslim tax. It would be called apartheid if the Muslims were forced to pay a tax until they were sagirun, until they were subdued, humbled, humiliated. You can translate it multiple
Humbled.
ways. Humbled, okay, let's go with humbled or subdued. But humbled is good. Yeah. Imagine the Jews had a tax, and actually it doesn't have a limit on the Jews. So most people don't realize this. It's down to the individual
Hello.
caliph to charge.
Sorry. I got a phone call and the I don't know what happened. So can you hear
Okay, are
me
you
now?
okay now? Yes, I can hear you fine. Yeah. So
Yeah, I lost the sound. Yeah, can you repeat?
it's okay. I'll say it again. Imagine that Israel charged a Muslim tax to humble the Muslim. We would call that
Isn't that what's
apartheid.
happening? That's
I
what's
mean,
happening
no, the
today.
Muslims and Jews pay the exact same tax in Israel.
Oh, okay,
So
but it depends on the
I
state.
just a straight Mahmoud, a straight answer on this because I think it's important that we have these like just an honest dialogue. If
Hmm.
Israel had a special Muslim tax to humble the Muslims, would you call that? Oh, we've lost him. I'm sure he'll be back. Um, while we're waiting, what I'd like to do is give a quick shout out. I received this incredible coin from Israel75coin.com. It's an amazing coin to celebrate the anniversary, the 75th anniversary of the Jewish state. And the link to this coin is in the description. They're beautiful. They come in like gold and silver, and it's a solid silver. So really appreciate them sending me this coin. It's beautiful and a nice little momentum for the Jewish state. There's not many of them. It's I think there was only 7,500 of them minted. So yeah, head over to Israel75coin.com and pick up your coin. And now hopefully Mahmoud will be back. I'm going to check on my Instagram DMs to see if he is coming back. Instagram. Bear with me. I'm just seeing if I'm hearing from him. Okay, so while he's waiting, we've got some really fiery debates coming up. I was at Speaker's Corner yesterday, and the extremists were out in full force. So we've got some amazing little clips which we'll be uploading over the week. So make sure you subscribe to the Israel Advocacy Movement so that you don't miss that. Make sure that you're following us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter as we post different content to all of these channels. And hopefully Mahmoud will be back. I do hope so. I was enjoying the conversation. It was a difficult question because I think most people would say it was apartheid if Israel charged the Muslims a special Muslim tax to humble them. I would call that apartheid. I would not support that. I would protest against that. But while we wait for Mahmoud, if anyone wants to fire questions in the chat, I'll leave this live for a while. Hopefully, he will be joining us again. But yeah, feel free to fire questions in the chat while we wait. So one comment is that question destroyed him. I hope not, because I didn't even want this to be a little more of a debate, but I think it's important to hold the line. It's important to hold the line when people tell you that the Jews were better and safe and protected under Islam, and that it was only with Zionism that relationships deteriorated. That's not true. It's not a true statement, and we should push back on that because it delegitimizes our claim to the land. Okay, we have one question. Because I don't really understand how Judaism works, so are you an Orthodox Jew? Yes, I'm an Orthodox Jew, although I hate the label Orthodox. Orthodox is not a Jewish word. It's a Christian term. It's a Greek term. I would describe myself as an observant Jew. I try to follow the law of Moses. We keep his commandments, and we keep the decrees, the gezerot and the takanot that the rabbis instituted. So yes, I am an Orthodox Jew, and Mahmoud is back, and I believe Mahmoud probably also doesn't like the word Orthodox, but would describe himself as an Orthodox Muslim, I'm sure, in the same way.
Sorry, my phone just turned off completely. I'm using the iPad right now, so.
Appreciate that. They thought my question had destroyed you, and I was like, I don't think so. He's got stronger convictions than one of my questions. So I'll repeat the question for those that have just joined them for yourself. If Israel,
back to your audience, it's not the real question. It's not the amount of anyway. Go ahead.
Well, we'll get to the real questions. This is my real question, and you missed me plug these beautiful little coins, Mahmoud. If you want one, which I'm sure you don't, I will happily mail you one. It's a 75-year celebration of the state of Israel as a specially minted coin, which everyone else can get from Israel75coin.com. But Mahmoud, if you want it, I'll post it to you first class.
I'll give you the Palestinian one when it's done. Anyway.
So what I was going to say is just bringing it back to the question: if Israel forced the Palestinians, the Muslims, to pay a tax so that they would be humbled, and the Jews paid a separate tax, would you say that was apartheid?
The separate tax?
Not just a separate tax, it's tax to humble them.
Well, let me tell you, to be honest with you, I know for a fact in many other Arab nations, especially in the Gulf, Muslim foreigners tend to pay more tax than the local Gulf countries. I know that for a fact. And it's happening not only between Muslims and Christians or other faiths, it's between Muslims and Muslims. Because locals today get to pay less than foreigners. Whether you're a Muslim or not, it's happening today. You can look it up. Sorry, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Can't hear anything. Can you hear me? I can't hear anything. I don't know what's up.
Okay, that was my fault. I muted myself, and now we've lost Mahmoud again. Apologies. Can you hear me now in the chat? I'm hoping someone can hear. Yes or no? No, perfect. Okay, sorry. Okay, let me just. Sorry, Mahmoud, that was me. So, as I said before, I do not judge Islam by whichever ruler is currently ruling a Muslim state. I'm judging Islam by Islam. And so forget what Muslims are doing to other Muslims, because Muslims can be the biggest tyrants when it comes to other Muslims. Muslim rulers have their foot on the throats of their Muslim subjects, just like they had their foot on the throat of their Jewish subjects. I'm judging Islam by Islam here, by the Quran and the Hadith. And so bringing it back, forget what other people...
I'll tell you, this is my understanding of the zakah and the jizya. People come usually and say, like, we don't believe in the same faith. We don't have to follow your rules. Well, we do whatever we want. Well, it's not like that, you know. Okay, now you're in Great Britain, right? And you pay taxes, and you don't know that some of these taxes might go to the church, and it probably does. Some of the taxes that you're paying goes some of it to the church. It probably does. It probably not. I'm not sure. But you can't say I don't have to pay that because I'm a Jew. I'm not a Christian, right? Well, they might tell you it's not like that. We're, you know, there's
That's
a lot
not,
of.
that's my question isn't around taxing. Like taxing's taxing. Everybody has to pay their taxes.
Well, jizya and zakat, it's tax.
So
Just as you
this
have
is what I'm trying to.
to.
I'm trying to get just and it's a bit cruel because I'm pinning you down because I know you don't want to say that would be fine. But if Israel were to charge a Muslim-only tax to humble, subdue the Muslims, would you say that was apartheid? It's a yes/no answer.
Well, obviously, in common sense, it is, but this is not how it is. Like in
So
fact, that's not how it is. But
so
that's not what the Quran means. To subdue is that not to, and especially it's not talking about the people of the book, and it's talking about those who live.
It's talking explicitly about the people of the book that reject the prophecy of Muhammad. It's explicit in the ayah.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. It could be. That's not how.
Yeah, let me throw you a line. Let me throw you a line here because I know the answer is not. It's not a positive answer. And when I say I judge Islam by the Quran and the Sunnah, I also judge Muslims by how they interpret the Quran and the Sunnah. And there are many Muslims throughout time who have gone above and beyond to protect and to help the Jewish people, like 100%. Like I'm on board with that.
And it's mandatory.
But
we have
equally, I would say there are far more Muslims, unfortunately, that have gone the other way. And so
because they're extremist, biased, and uneducated.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. And so what I like
find both sides.
100, and you'll find the same in Judaism and Christianity.
Exactly.
It's not a problem of Islam. Scripture can be taken for good or for bad. So you can have a Muslim who reads the Quran and believe that Jews are going to Jannah if they believe in Yom al-Din and do righteous deeds. You'll have another Muslim will read that same Quran and they'll believe that the Jews rebelled against Allah and they're being cursed and they're apes and pigs and you can't take them as your friend. Both read the same book. One takes it for good, one takes it for evil. And you can apply the same standard to Judaism and Jewish scripture.
Exactly.
There are extremists.
We call this for me not to be. I have special names for those people. They go to ijtihad. They go ijtihad. They try to be perfect, whereas they misinterpret. They're trying to be perfectionist. I don't know if it makes sense. So they try to be perfect towards God, but at the same time, they don't know that they're misinterpreting things. So this is why I can't answer your questions correctly. I'm not a scholar of Islam, right? But what I understand from that verse, as a like I take religion as a personal thing. I'm not religious to show other people that I'm religious. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a Muslim because it's between me. I submit my will to God, just like the previous prophets did. That's the meaning of Islam. It doesn't follow. It's not Mohammedanism, right? So I just submit. This is how it is. Like, okay, I'm not a scholar. God knows everything. I'm only human.
Okay, so let's bring it back. So we've gone into Islam, Judaism, religion. I think politics is just as important in this conversation. James Johnson, I am reading the questions, but we'll get to the questions at the end. We're in the middle of a conversation, and so if you've got comments you want me or Mahmoud to answer, we will get to those towards the end of the conversation. We want to do at least another 20 minutes backwards and forwards, though. So to bring it back, there are 2 million Arabs that live in Israel with full equality. They can pray. They can vote, they can become prime minister. There's no law that prevents a Muslim from becoming the leader of the Jewish state because it's a secular democracy. There's a separation of synagogue and state. That's not the case under the Palestinian Authority, and it's not the case in any of the surrounding states. All the states that surround Israel.
Come on, man. You have
No,
an enemy neighboring country to.
no. I mean, name a country
Yeah.
where a Muslim country where a Jew can become prime minister.
A Jew can be a prime minister. There's
Yeah.
a Christian president, for example. You have it next to you in Lebanon.
Lebanon's. I mean, there's a civil war that was a Christian majority country, and the Christians are being driven
Not
out.
necessarily. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Like by major. Like some,
But by
a prime
definition,
minister can be a Muslim. You know.
So Syria, no. Like literally all the sort of actually Syria's maybe the exception because Assad is an Alawite. I think you still have to be Muslim, but he had the kind of like
Man, it's not religious. It's not sectarian. There's no Jews nowadays in the Arab world.
Why?
That's a good question. Do the state of Israel and a lot of them has been being accused of conspiring to the state of Israel.
Persecution. It's oppression. Persecution.
Oppression.
Islam is supposed to stand up against the tyrant. It's supposed to stand up to the oppressed. The Jews of the Middle East were so oppressed. There are none left in the Middle East. The only Middle Eastern country where the Jewish community is growing is, thank God, Alhamdulillah, the United Arab Emirates.
You can't relate that issue to Muslims. Muslims would not do that. Islam would not do that to the Jewish faith, like people of the Jewish faith.
But they did. They did. Like even with the greatest respect.
Yeah, but those presidents and leaders, you can't take them to be real Muslims.
That I agree with. But
a lot of them have their own private agenda. They want to be more powerful. They find threats.
Agreed. But I'm saying that doesn't help us. Like the fact that the Muslim leaders aren't following Islam as they should is almost inconsequential for us because the end result is we're still going to be oppressed and we still were oppressed, which is why we need a state. So I just get to it like a really simple question. Really simple question. But you're like saying the Jews
as a Muslim, I don't find any Arab leader today as doing the right what the Islamic law teaches. None of them are
I agree.
Islam.
I agree.
You know what I mean? And that's the problem.
But that's not our problem. That's what I'm saying. So I'm saying you have all these Muslim states run by tyrants, or most of them run by tyrants, where the people are oppressed, where there's inequality, where they're not practicing their religion as you believe they should. And then you have the Israeli state, where Jews and Arabs have complete equality. There is no difference. There are hundreds of mosques where a Muslim can become prime minister, where there is complete freedom for all, where you have Arab judges sending Jewish prime ministers and Jewish presidents.
And a Muslim be the prime minister in Israel?
Yes.
I doubt that.
No, absolutely they can. I mean, they're literally.
I mean, it's not a Jewish state anymore.
I mean, what they mean by a Jewish state is that the culture, the national culture of the state is Jewish. The language is Hebrew. The day of rest is Saturday. They don't celebrate Christmas. They celebrate Pesach and Passover. This is what it means to be a Jewish state. 25% of the population are not Jewish, and they have the.
So it's a secular state.
Yes, it's a secular state. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a. You don't find democracy in it, like you. I doubt a Muslim would ever run for a prime minister.
I mean, there are Muslims in government. There are Muslim political parties. The Ikhwan Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, have political representation in Israel. It's just not. It's not what most Muslims think. And so my question's really simple. In Israel, you have the equality and the freedom that you're talking, that you say you want for the region. And that's the area where the Jewish majority has control. In the area where the Muslim majority has control, there are no Jews and apartheid laws against Jews. And so my question is very simple. What makes you think that if there were a Palestinian state, the Jews would not be oppressed just like they have been in previous generations? I don't think Abu Mazen is the perfect Muslim. I agree. And so
but eventually, like, where is it safe for anybody? Do you think it's easier for Muslims to be under Abu Mazen's? That's my point of view. If it's not safe for the Jews, then what does it say for?
I think, but the difference is it's not just Abu Mazen that's trying to kill the Jews. Sorry, in the case of let's say Abu Mazen is persecuting Muslims and oppressing Muslims and stealing the wealth and is corrupt, etc. I agree with all of that. But the difference is it's your neighbor. It's the average Palestinian who believes that the land is there and will fight the Jew. And much of it is unfortunately religious based. And
It's
so
not Jewish. Our problem is not with Jews. It's
I
not.
think it is. I think it's with Jews.
No, man. The first people who protected Prophet Muhammad were Jews.
I agree with that, and there were Sahaba that were Jews. I agree with all of that. But what I'm saying is, the issue is that these Jews are not under the Muslim; they are equal to the Muslim. That's the issue. The issue is that Jews and Muslims.
It's a political issue. It's not religious. Like, based on let's say.
I think it is religious for most Muslims. The reason why, is that the death toll in Israel is tiny. Like, you're talking this year, just over 100 people have been killed, and like 90-something% of them were terrorists, members of Islamic Jihad, etc. Whereas the
other side would say the same thing.
No, it's not. It's not the Israelis that are being killed are civilians.
And a lot of civilian Palestinians have been killed as well since the beginning.
Not this year. No, definitely not. Definitely.
I'm sure.
I mean, I can take you through the list.
Many of them children and women.
No, the children, there have been children, but they've been members of terror organizations carrying out attacks against the IDF.
Right, they're children at the end of the day. They can be squeezed and formed the way you want.
Child soldiers, I agree with you. And child soldiers are one of the most inhumane and barbaric things that still exist on this planet.
Could
be,
but
the fact that nobody has a go at these organizations that recruit. I've spent the last week making a video. I've been making a video, and it's a horrendous video. It's been one of the most depressing videos I've ever made. I'm going through every single Palestinian that's been killed this year in the West Bank and logging their affiliation with the different organizations, capturing the photographs of them posing with their M16, etc. And the most depressing aspect of this has been going on young Palestinians' Facebook pages and looking at them posing with M4.
So let me understand this. Are you afraid of the child, or are you?
Am I afraid of a child pointing an M16 at me? Yes, I am.
Well, an M16. How many settlers today go through?
Children.
Many of them are teenagers.
Okay,
I see a lot of teenagers wearing carrying.
Would you condemn
those what you're saying? Sorry, but at least what you're seeing is a picture. It's not really happening online. Like, in fact, like today, I see a lot of them in the news. Settlers, teenagers carrying M16s, pushing Palestinians around, and I can show you many videos.
So you're talking. I think there's a difference between a trained soldier and a 14-year-old child in school. Would you say there's a difference between an 18-year-old soldier and a 14-year-old child in school?
Well, what if they're both trained?
But I think it's wrong to train a 14-year-old in the art of war.
And it could be both for the other side. Like,
I would not. If Israel was recruiting 14-year-old children, I would be protesting against that.
Sure, but let me tell you something. That kid that grows up in Palestine today and watches his house being raided every day, and watches his neighbor's house and his friends being bullied and pushed by IDF soldiers, and some of them, their parents, their father get shot, like Muhammad al-Durra, like people, watching their son being shot right when they're trying to protect them, and they feel vulnerable. Like you're talking about the vulnerability. I see the vulnerability in the Palestinians today. You know what I mean?
But I agree with that. But child soldiers is still wrong.
A child that's supposed to. A Palestinian child that's supposed to be learning today gets stopped by an IDF just to check his bag, and he gets scared. That's the simplest thing.
But I'm not getting a straight answer from you. Are you saying child soldiers are okay?
Of course not. Nobody.
Okay,
it's not okay. Good. Obviously, you don't need my answer with that. Everybody denies it. Nobody But what I'm
So,
saying,
so
what I'm
what
trying to
what do
say
you
to
say?
you,
What do you say to those organizations, Palestinian resistance movements, as you would call them, that actively recruit these children?
these children, if they're not going to be recruited by whatever, I'm not sure with the facts that you're having, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Okay.
But for the sake of argument, those children, if they're not going to be going through an active organization that watches over them, that's if you want to put me in a devil advocate here, right? Okay, I would say if it's not going to be, they would have gone like random. They would just go and shoot and carry and commit crimes, because what you have to know, those children have a psychological problem. Nobody does this act without a psychological problem. Even the worst terrorists today, they got psychological problems. Whatever, you can't associate terrorism with Islam only, but any terrorist today, they definitely have a psychological problem and an issue or a historical problem that we have to tackle in the first place, because a wrong act leads to worse acts in the future. You know what I mean? And that's what's happening. One guy getting shot, somebody has to avenge him. Other people, he gets shot again, his relatives has to avenge him too, you know? This is what's happening. This kid saw someone of his relatives being shot at and killed, and he has to avenge them too. He grows up having this vengeance in he blocks anything for his future. He doesn't want to study anymore. He doesn't want to do anything good for his life anymore, because it's a dead end. I don't have another nationality. I can't flee the land. I'm stuck being occupied, being oppressed, not being able to go to school freely. Sure. How old is this guy?
This kid's 16, but younger when this
16.
photograph was taken. He was killed when he was 16.
Let's not be biased here. I see settlers looking the same thing on my side, right? This guy's
I'd be surprised, very surprised, and I mean, it would be a welcomed education for me if there were kids that young walking around with guns like that. I think that the settlers definitely are armed by and large. They feel out of necessity. Many of them
Brother
have been.
Yusuf, you showed me a picture of it's a
Yeah.
picture.
Okay, so
To
I'll
be
tell
honest
you,
with you,
so
I would love as a
let-
child.
let me
As
bring this back up, just so I think it's important, just so we can bring this back up. Let me there we go. So looking at this again, what you can see here is this is from is this the Lion's Den? I'm not sure. Let me just are you good with the Palestinian logos? I know it's Al-Aqsa. It's Khud Al-Aqsa. But he was claimed, this young boy here, this young child, was a member when he died, when he was killed. What they tend to do is they put up the Shahid information, and he was a member of the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade claimed him as one of their own.
Okay.
And so that's an example of a young boy.
They can claim anyone they want.
They can, you're right, but usually you
Right.
see them at the funerals. I mean, we can Google this kid. He's called Abu Zaytun. If anyone's interested, we can now Google and have a look at.
My point is that what's the alternative for that kid if he hadn't gone this path?
What's the alternative for that kid if he hadn't gone that path? Well, I mean this with the greatest respect. Most Palestinians don't join the fighting groups. Most Palestinians,
Right.
most 16-year-old kids get a job. One of the depressing things for me when I was going through their Facebooks was it tended to be like cliques of young boys glorifying and glamorizing the Shahid, the Shahuda, and
martyrs.
Romanticize
right?
the martyrs. Yeah, they romanticize the martyrs. I grew up in a working class community in the north of England. Our
Right.
idols were footballers. I moved into the Jewish community and they had better idols and footballers and pop singers, but they had good role models that they would look up to. Maybe it was a rabbi, maybe it was someone else.
Right. Like, sorry, go back.
If you're looking up to a 23-year-old leader of the Lions Den or any of these groups whose sole purpose is the murder and destruction of Israeli civilians, and that's your role model, the tragedy is these cliques of young Palestinian boys that want to be that person. They want to die killing Jews. That's the depressing side.
That's not how it is, man.
Really? I mean, that's what it's like when I'm going on their Facebooks. I'm literally going through all these people and research.
Yeah, well, social media deceives, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But you have to know that it's not the killing of Jews.
Okay, let me put it. Right? They would say I mean, they say Yahud. They don't say Zionist. They tend to say Yahud. That's what they say when I'm reading.
Well, I agree, but there's a lot of trying to find the words here, the correct words. There's a lot of wrong literacy, especially in the terminologies that are being used politically, and especially in the social media. And we can find them in both sides.
I agree.
It's not a problem between Jews. We have loved and lived and had, like I said in my comments, we used to call each other cousins. It's not the problem of faith. It's a problem of vengeance. Violence creates more violence. Terrorism creates more terrorism. And that's what we need to stop. These kids are being grown and brought up watching violence.
Can I ask a personal question? Do you have any family that are still in the West Bank or Gaza?
Yeah, I got family in Ramallah.
Do any of your family members fought? Like, because obviously nobody knows your full name. That's deliberate. They just know that you're a Canadian Palestinian. Have you ever have any of your family been killed fighting Israelis?
I got their house has been raided.
Yeah, and were they arrested for?
Yeah, their neighbor had been. That's about it.
Yeah,
thank God. I hope we don't hear worse news. You know.
No, because the reason I was asking that question is sorry, go on.
They have been in the other side, in the Israeli side, but they saw the old houses and our ancestors in Yafa and things like that. But a part of that, no. Thank God we haven't heard any worse, and we hope we don't hear any worse news. Sorry.
And so that doesn't surprise me because I think a lot of these kids are recruited from the camps, from the refugee camps. It's weird to call them refugee camps because they're in the area that you would call Palestine, but that aside, and these tend to be the more impoverished neighborhoods, and like most of the recruits, that's where they come from. So like it would be the Balata camp or any of them.
Man, their social status isn't like you and I.
Yeah,
they have worse situation. They have worse. Like, imagine NGOs can't even reach there.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, like we know refugee camps in Syria, Lebanon, and all over the place. Palestinian refugee camps, but they're in a bad situation, but not as worse as the ones are in Palestine. You know what I mean? Because they're witnessing the IDF like hand in hand, like close up. You know?
But why is it that someone from Ramallah and not one of the camps, from Bethlehem, and not Ada, why is it that the camps, the people from Ramallah, the average person from Ramallah, isn't joining the Lions Den or the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade? Why is it so pervasive in the camps? Is it desperation? Is it like a socioeconomic thing?
I would say because they're still under the rule of the Palestinian Authority, and as you know, the Palestinian Authority they're in control in that area. Another thing I would say, they're not far behind, because I feel like they're gonna reach there sooner or later, because their life. You can't compare an Israeli citizen to a Palestinian citizen. Palestinian citizens have been living harsher life.
I would agree with that. I've been to the Palestinian neighborhoods many times.
How did you find it?
Truthfully, because I was in the West Bank, Yehuda v'Shomron, far more affluent than I imagined. Like the first time I went there, I was expecting it to look like a concentration camp. I was expecting to see poverty everywhere. And because I was driving on Israeli roads that are going through the West Bank, so the Palestinian cars that were on there were connected to the Palestinian Authority usually. So they were driving fancy cars. There was a lot of money. Every village would have like a huge villa in it, and obviously it's for the entire family to live in there. But lovely red roof, red tiles, very beautiful. I went there.
Can you tell me the location? I'd like to look that up.
Yeah, so I mean, the easiest one for people to look for, just Google Rawabi. It's an entire city, which is very affluent. It's like a commuter city for Ramallah. So there's a lot of money in the West Bank. I made a video called Super Rich Palestinians. Watch it. It's on the YouTube channel. Now, obviously, there's a lot more money in Israel, but Israel has spent the last 75 years building up a state, whereas the Palestinians have spent the last 75 years trying to destroy a state rather than build a state, and as a consequence, they are in a weaker position economically. But it's not.
Unfortunately, we have a lot of Arab leaders that could be corrupt.
I agree.
A lot of leaders in general. They go for leadership just to be corrupt. They brought up to be corrupt.
Completely agree with all of that. And I would also caveat: I haven't been to the camps because if I did, I'd get killed. When I go there, I go in disguise to the Palestinian territories. Fortunately, I've never been recognized.
Man, you look more Muslim than me.
Jazakallahu khairan. It's a very sunny beard. Beard.
First time I saw you in Hyde Park, I thought you were a Muslim convert.
In fairness, I have so many Muslims who wish me assalamu alaikum. I'm not realizing that I'm a Yahud. You can't say salam.
There's a lot of resemblance. You would be shocked. Like imagine
that.
You know the traditional abaya that a lot of women in the Gulf wear.
Yeah.
The all black covering their face. That traditionally has been taken by the Jews of that region. Do you know that? Many of the traditional attire today have been adopted by the traditional Jews.
You mean like the family Jews? I did know that they wore the niqab in Iraq as well. That's. But in the same way that if you look at European Jews, they dress European as well. I'm not wearing the traditional beged of the Yehudi. It's a nice yellow shirt.
Is it only Ashkenazis wear that, or?
So no, it's a different. So Ashkenazi Jews took on the traditions, the clothing of European nobility, and bizarrely now the Mizrahim, the Jews of the Middle East, have also adopted that clothing. So now if you're a religious Jew, we all dress like 17th century Polish noblemen, which is fine, but it's not. It's definitely not what Musa and Moses would have been wearing.
He probably wore something closer to the Arab world.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'd like to do is, I think, because we've hit the hour mark, is maybe if we open the floor up to questions from the audience, because I think we can go backwards and forwards a lot on a lot of this stuff. But I think it'll be really interesting. The chat's been going well. There's a lot of people who like what you're saying. There's a lot of people who don't like what you're saying. There's always a lot of people that don't like what I'm saying. So yeah, now feel free to fire questions in the chat, and either we'll pin the comment, and hopefully Mahmoud or myself can answer.
Sure. I'm just not a representative of Islam. Just to be clear with everyone in the comments, I'm not a representative of Islam. I'm not a representative of Palestine. I share a point of view with brother. Can I call you Yusuf? That's the original name.
Yeah. In Hebrew we call it Yosef, but it's the same. Yes, it's the same.
I shared my point of view with brother Yusuf, and may God lead us to the straight path.
Amen. Okay, so let's see if we've got any questions. So At the moment they're debating Jesus, so I'll scroll up and read some of the earlier questions because there was a lot of questions that I saw being fired.
I love that. I like that topic. Maybe upon them.
Okay, here's Rose Thorne has asked. Let's pin this. Why are the Palestinians still in refugee camps? No other peoples live in refugee camps after so many decades. They seem
Right.
to lack the will to move forward. Are Palestinians professional victims?
Does that go for me? You want to go first, or
I think that's. I'll give my thoughts on it, but I'll let you go first. Actually, I'll go first, and then you can have the closing thoughts. How about that? Otherwise, I'll close, and it won't be fair.
Sure.
So, Palestinian refugees are not refugees. A tiny fraction of those that were actually that either were forced to flee or willingly fled the conflict in 48. Very few of them are still alive today. Unsurprisingly, because it was 75 years ago. So those that are alive today were young children when this happened. What we have today is their descendants. Now, I don't describe myself as a Polish refugee, despite my ancestors fleeing persecution from Polish anti-Semites. I'm here in the UK, but I'm not a Polish Jew. I'm a British Jew. It's the same with Palestinians. The Palestinians today are not refugees. They've retained that status so that the cause doesn't die. If the Palestinian refugees go away, there is less chance of the state of Israel being destroyed. If you can bring back millions and millions of people, even if they've just got one great grandparent that lived there for a couple of years, if you can claim all these people as Palestinian and bring them back, it's a demographic threat to the state of Israel in terms of its Jewishness. And so a Palestinian, just for those that don't know, according to the United Nations Relief Work Agency, which is a Palestinian organization, is anyone who has on their father's side, patrilineally, a ancestor that lived in that region in mandatory Palestine between 1946 and 1948. They could have come there in 1945 from Iraq, but they would still qualify as a Palestinian, as long as they're Arab and it comes via the father. And if you have that, you can be a Palestinian refugee, even if the other 7 grandparents that you have are all from somewhere else. Ethiopia, Egypt, Jamaica. It makes no difference. You are still a Palestinian, according to the United Nations Relief Work Agency. And it's because if you retain the status of refugee, you can threaten the existence of Israel through demographics, and the cause never dies out because there's all these so-called Palestinians. So they keep them in refugee camps. They prevent them from getting citizenship. They deny them their most basic rights like education and healthcare and freedom to move in many of the Muslim states where they're in camps. And it's even more perverse when you move to the West Bank and Gaza, where you have refugee camps for Palestinian refugees in what they would call Palestine. Think about that. How can you be a Palestinian refugee living in your so-called country of Palestine? You're not a refugee. You're living there.
I agree with you. They're not refugees. They live in their own land. Okay. I don't know where the refugee term came from. I know the refugees surrounding the countries, but they are the indigenous people of that land, just like we have native Canadians, and they have the right to live with their own government. They have the right. They claim the right. They want the right of retrieving their lands, which was occupied by the Israelis. I'm not gonna be a bias here. They could claim it. They could not. Uh, what I'm trying to say, we have a problem today as humans. Let's just not be biased as Israelis and Palestinians. We have a problem here today, and how can we solve this problem? That's where we need to tackle this issue. We need to tackle the issue how to solve the Palestinians that are existing today, and they have every humanitarian right, just like any other country in the world. How can we stop? How can we stop from giving them their chance to move forward in life. Okay, we agree there are Palestinians. I don't call them refugees. They have the right to live in that land. Maybe they have the right to live with the present day Jews who call themselves Israelis. And why not? Let's solve this issue. Palestinians, Arabs, and Israelis can live together. Muslims and Jews can live together. Why not? Give them the right, retrieve all the refugees in the world of Palestine, let all the Jews have the right to claim, why not? You know what I'm
Okay.
trying to say?
Yeah, and what I'm
We
trying
have,
to do is, I said I'd give you the last word on that. So I'll leave that. We've got another question from Daniel Kingsley. My question is, how much of an influence does Palestinian education have on the outlook for Palestinian children, as described by Mahmoud?
come again? Described by
How much of an influence does Palestinian education have on the outlook for Palestinian children? So you were describing like what Palestinian
Yeah,
children.
probably none. Probably there is. I'm not sure. I have to look back at the statistics and the government issues there. But there's a lot of Palestinians that are being educated, those who can access education. Those have been exiled outside of the conflict regions, especially those who live in the modern day, who live in the regions around, like Syria, live in Lebanon. Many, even in the Gulf, many Palestinians have been educated, have been businessmen. Many of them are like wealthy businessmen in the Gulf region. They're educated, they're doctors. However, those who can't access education, see, education is a mandatory thing for a Muslim. It's there. Illiteracy is a problem, because it can lead to so many uh, like devilish diversions and things that can go against the Quran and the Sunnah. So we have to be educated. It's a must. But for those who can't access it, what can they do? You know?
So, for the next question that ties into that, could learning each other's languages be a stepping stone to peace? So, my experience is certainly Arabs living in Israel speak Hebrew because they're living in Israel. Lots of Palestinians actually speak Hebrew. I've spoken to many Palestinians that speak Hebrew. Lots of Jews speak Arabic. Many actually, the language at home would have been Arabic because they came from the grandparents or parents came from Muslim majority countries where Arabic was the language that was spoken. So in my experience, it's not a question of language. I think learning each other's language is important. And I think particularly when 25% of your country is Arab, it should be taught in schools. I think that's a useful thing so you can converse with your neighbor. But I don't think that learning the language would bridge the gap. I think it would just be another tool in the arsenal to try and bring about peace. It's a terrible
I agree.
analogy, arsenal for peace, but yeah.
Right. It's a tool. Yeah, it's a strong tool, and it can lead to better comprehension to one another. You know what I mean? Uh, However, it doesn't deny. Uh, I think it's. Let's just keep it to that. It's a tool. Let's move to another. I lost the sound again.
Okay, that's me. Sorry. I said I think this one might be for me, or one of the other Jews in the chat. Okay, if you follow Torah, do you do animal sacrifice as it is required in the Torah? No, we don't because we don't have a temple. There's a mosque in our temple at the moment. We don't have a dome. I'm not advocating to destroy the mosque. It's a beautiful building. We're not that type. The dome can stay. But no, well, we don't do sacrifices without a temple. Now, there's just been a super chat, but it hasn't actually given the question. Ultra Vegeta, I think you've just given 24. I don't know what that currency logo is, so I'm hoping the conversion rate's amazing and you've just donated $10,000. Thank you. But if you could just post your question again in the comments, that would be great, and we can see that. So I'm just gonna go back. Next question is the Jews don't want to pay the jizya. That's true. We don't. There's no limit to it. It's not great.
We don't want to pay zakah either. Nobody wants to pay tax. Run away from tax.
Okay.
What we're doing.
I actually haven't read this question yet, but it's long, so I'm hoping this isn't going to bite me. As an American, I've never been able to understand the Jewish mindset. What I understand from history is that after World War II, Jewish history didn't start at World War II, by the way. The Jews were given this land. No, we weren't. The Jews were not given the land. The Jews built up a state and fought for the land and died for the land. It was not given to us. A land quite a bit smaller than what was first offered to them. Yes, British mandatory Palestine was Jordan, Israel, Gaza, and the West Bank. The Jews lost 78% of it straight away to Jordan. And the Jordanians did not call it Palestine. They called it Jordan. What remained was still too much.
Oh, man, it was called Palestine. I disagree.
Yeah, they should have called it Palestine if it was Palestine land, but they didn't. They called it Jordan. They called it the Emirate of Jordan.
The British mandate.
Yeah, British mandate of Palestine.
It used to be called the British Mandate of Palestine.
Yeah, and that was divided, and most of that was given to some Arabs, and those Arabs changed its name to Jordan, not Palestine. Only Bey Abd al-Hadi said that Palestine is a Zionist term. It's a word the Zionists invented. He said it's always been called Southern Syria. But I'll continue reading what might be a statement or question.
I disagree with that point, but go on.
Yeah. The day after they became their own country, 5 other surrounding Arab countries declared war. The Jews, understanding that the best defense is a good offense, or not office, but a good office is nice, did not wait for these Arab countries to cross their borders. Instead, they outflanked them and attacked them, and that's all I can say. I think it's not done the full question. But yeah, essentially, Israel declared independence, and the Arabs made the worst strategic decision they've ever made. Instead of declaring independence, they declared war, they declared jihad, and they lost. And they've lost every subsequent war. If in 1948 the Arabs had declared independence and established the state of Palestine, they would have had a much bigger state than the Jews. We would have had peace, and both nations would have been able to build up their economy, ideally cooperate and work together, and we wouldn't have one refugee. We wouldn't have 75 years of conflict. We would hopefully have had 75 years of prosperity. Declaring war on the Jewish state was the most stupid decision that the Arab leadership ever made.
And can I?
Yeah, you can definitely respond to that. No, you can't. I'm going to mute you. That's it. We're done. No.
And I would go the same for the state of Israel. A lot of the presidents that came, they're all they're bad people. To be honest, they none of them strived for peace. They ignited the fire worse. They seized lands and more lands, even from their neighboring countries, even from Lebanon, Syria, Egypt. They're not trying because they're not people for peace. The Israeli presidents, all in history, they're not the ideal people to go for peace. They have always been hating the Palestinians, hating the Arabs. There are chants against the Arabs, death to Arabs, so many on and on. They're not I don't see them as the ideal people for peace. Get us a really decent rabbi to be the president of Israel, and we can easily negotiate and talk to him. Just get us people of righteousness. I don't want people who have been living outside in the Europe world and in America trying to come in a region where religion dogmas are all around, trying to impose a foreign Western law onto a nation where it's surrounded. I don't know if I'm trying to reach my point. I'm not sure if you can understand it.
I can understand. I don't think I agree with it. I think Israel's leaders have generally been good people that have strived for peace. They've proposed multiple peace offers to the Palestinians. Every time the Arabs were offered a peace offer, they rejected it. 37, 47, Camp David, Taba, Ulmer, Trump. It doesn't matter who's proposing it's always been rejected. That's not for want of trying on the part of the Israeli side. I also think the Israelis have always been in a position where if they wanted to, they could have ethnically cleansed the Arabs. If they wanted to, they could have caused real devastation, like Bashar al-Assad, the butcher, has caused in Syria. Israel is far more mightier and powerful than Assad. Israel could have reaped devastation on the Palestinians, certainly on its own Arab citizens, but it hasn't. Instead, it's offered them equality. It's created Arab political parties. Every single sign in Israel street sign has Arabic on it on the roads. It's like Israel's leaders have been for coexistence and peace from
Fine,
its
retrieve the Arab Jews to their original nations, and we'll write the signs. It's not a big deal.
retrieve. Is it? It's lovely to say that after they're ethnically cleansed, lose all their property worth billions,
Man, they weren't
4 to 5
weren't-
times the size of Israel, and then you say, yeah, you can come back now that we've taken all this, and you can
they
come
were
and live in
not
one of the most
ethnically cleansed.
anti-Semitic countries in the world with neighbors who literally want to kill you. But yeah, come back, guys. It'll be great.
Come back, guys. It will be great. But they weren't ethnically cleansed by the Arabs, man.
In some countries they were, in other countries they fled because of persecution.
I don't.
There are literal laws that ban Jews from being citizens of some Arab countries.
See, there's always problems and issues. I don't think we can relate them to a nation or a religion. Speaking of a nation and a religion, I read an article about a rabbi called Samsung in the 1888, where Jews were a nation of Judah and not a religion. It was made a religion in 1888. Is that true? Have you read something like that?
I've not heard of that, but there's no Hebrew term, like in biblical Hebrew, for religion. Like religion's a modern concept. Faith is like, to be a member of the Ummah, to be a Muslim, you take the Shahada. It's based on faith. Judaism is based on birth. So if you have a Jewish mother, you're Jewish. If you convert to the religion, then it's based on faith. But once you've sincerely converted, even if you apostate, you're still Jewish. Just like even if a Jew born of a Jewish mother apostates, they're still Jewish. So religion is a Western, or certainly not a Jewish concept. We see ourselves as a people, Am Yisrael, the people of Israel. Whereas other religions are religions, it's faith-based. If you stop believing that Muhammad is the final messenger of God, you're no longer a Muslim. You're an apostate. Whereas if you were a Jew and you stopped believing in the prophecy of Musa, of Moses, Moshe, you're still a Jew. So I've not heard what you're saying, but it's kind of that's how we see ourselves.
Well,
we don't see ourselves.
The Muslims believe in most of what came to Prophet Moses and David.
The difficulty is they reject the authentic scriptures.
No, they don't.
There's been a tarif, corruption.
Tahrif in part of the verses, not all of it.
Yeah, but then who decides which? The fact that you believe some of it's been corrupted.
Some that can't relate to the Islamic to the Quran, Al-Furqan, which we call Al-Furqan. It's the difference between anything that doesn't relate to the which can be added up, or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
can be different. Even in the Bible, in the New Testament, we don't say all of it has been corrupted. Some of it had been corrupted. Some that relates to the Quran are truthful, and that's, you see it mostly. Like so it can be 20% or 20% could be corruption. Not all of it.
So you view it as our scriptures being corrupted. We view it that no. Some of it's been corrupted. We view it slightly differently. We view it as you copied our scripture, but got some of that copying wrong.
How? I can prove it right now.
So that as an example, Haman is in the wrong period. Haman was not in the period of Pharaoh. There were different periods. Anywhere where the Quran.
And what was Haman to you? What was Haman in the?
He was a Persian. A Persian,
right?
Yeah,
they recently discovered the Rosetta Stones that they that Haman was the chief builder. It says in the Rosetta Stones and the French Library of Hieroglyphs.
Hieroglyphics.
They proved that he's the top, the lead builder
I
of
tell
the
you what,
pharaoh.
I will go away and read this because it's a good
Yeah,
pushback. It's a good pushback. In language, there are more than one person. There are different people with the same name. Like I'm not the first Yosef. I'm not the first Joseph. There are many other
Prophet
Josephs.
Yusuf alayhi salam.
Exactly, it was one, but one of many. There are many, many, many Josephs.
It's a nice name as well.
Say that's a fair pushback. But we would say anything that contradicts the Torah is where you've miscopied something. You've got it slightly wrong. And you would say the other way around. You say that our scripture's been corrupted there. So we're saying the same thing. And on the day of judgment, we'll find out who's right.
Inshallah. But what I'm trying to say, religion is you can't be a perfect religious person. You have to do your own good thing in life, and that's you answer to God eventually. We clean our hearts with the good deeds, and God is the judge at the end. We strive for the better. You're not taking Israel with you to in the day of judgment. I'm not taking Palestine with me. And in fact, there's an ayah in the Quran. There's a verse in the Quran. لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد. You can't. In a sense, I can't translate it, but in a sense, you can't believe in this land or this nation. Therefore, you're going to go away from this nation, and your ancestry and your descendants are going to go away from it. Therefore, we're clinging on something that is not going to exist for our afterlife. See, the commonality between Jews and Muslims, we all believe in the afterlife, right? We're fighting for something that, in this worldly thing, that doesn't really mean sense to us. We're going to leave it behind. We're only keeping our good deed for God. You're not taking your money. I'm not taking anything with me. You know what I mean? It's a short period. You think it's a long period. It's very short.
Trust me, as someone who's getting older rapidly, we're here for a short time and it's quite depressing. So I'm going to throw up a few more questions and we'll try and end in like 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. It was the Temple Mount question I wanted to put up. So let me just find it again. Here we go. Young Welsh. Young Welsh, does the Temple Mount belong to Jews? My answer is it belongs to God. However, it should be under the sovereignty of the Jewish people because the Jewish people are the only people that allow freedom of prayer there. Millions of Muslims pray there every year. Jews are not allowed to pray there because the Jordanian Waqf denies us access, and it's our holiest site. It's the equivalent of the Kaaba to us. It should be open to all people. All people should be able to pray there. That's my answer. But as always, it's my show, so I'm going to give you, Mahmoud, the final say on that question.
I also believe it's a land of God. Everything is for God. When it was built on ruins. Historically, it's known that it was ruined and destroyed by the Romans and destroyed by so many. We have honored this place. As Muslim, we honored Prophet David. We honor Prophet Moses and all what Jews believe presently. We did not disgrade this place. We honor it. We don't allow any weaponry. We don't allow any violence in it. Therefore, there's so many things that can make this place holy for anybody and everybody that believes in God. And let's not take God as a source of violence. Let's not bring God's name into violence. What divides us today is purely economically, politically, not religiously. I can take a Jew today and go to the mosque and pray. He can pray his rituals. I can pray mine. And I can go to a synagogue and pray. And it says in the Quran, we can pray in the synagogue as long there's no idolatry. There's no problem. We can pray anywhere. This is a mosque of God. It's not a mosque of Muslims. I don't own it. God owns it. We have to respect it. We have to make it as pure as possible. If it was a temple, if it was a synagogue, we cannot disgrace. We cannot make it dirty or do anything. Even if it's a Christian church. It's a holy place. We have to respect it.
So I agree that we have to respect it. And on that note, I'll leave you there. Well, we'll do closing comments, but before that, we'll just read a nice comment from Shelley, which is very respectful talk. Thank you both. And I want to echo her words. Mahmoud, thank you so much for your time. I get a lot. It actually gives me genuine hope when I speak to Palestinians, because usually the Palestinians I speak to, it's the same. I had another conversation with a Palestinian last night, are more committed to making peace than the non-Palestinian Muslims I speak to on a daily basis. While everyone else is encouraging conflict and war, it's the Palestinians and the Zionists, the Israelis, the Jews that are trying to create dialogue and to create peace. So I want to thank you for coming on the channel, for sharing your thoughts with our audience, for providing us an insight.
My respect to your audience, and I have respect for everybody that is genuinely have a clear heart, like yourself. I know you have a clear heart, and that's why I like to talk to you. You find a lot of people that are you can't talk to them. It's impossible. They have, we say it in the Quran, they have a ghashasha. It's like they're blocked. They refuse to communicate or talk, or they don't have any educational background, or anyway.
So, and it's because one of the key things I do is I wake up Jews to the horrendous anti-Semitism that we face around the world and the necessity for a Jewish state. But I need to balance that with voices like yours, because I don't want my audience going away thinking this is Islam, this is Muslims, is that no, these are individuals, and they may be using their religion to attack Jews. They may be Palestinian and they may be using politics to attack Jews. But the majority of people are good and want peace. And so I think it's really important that people like yourself are able to come on this channel, talk to my audience, disagree on 80% of what we perceive to be happening, but agree on what we want to see, which is peace between Jews and Muslims, peace between Israelis and Palestinians. So people champ God's chosen people. There will never be, or they will never be peace. I hope you're wrong. Inshallah. But Israel, there will be peace.
Just like how there is war, there is peace. And this is how humans are. When you get ignorant into power, when you get greedy people into power, that's where you get wars. And it's a conflict of greed. It's not a conflict of religion, to be honest with you.
Why would I always end with human life? Blood is more important than land, rocks, and soil.
I agree.
Inshallah, we'll find peace. But Ezrat Hashem, thank you very much. I usually give my guests the opportunity to shout out their socials, but given the context and given the channel, I won't do that this time. So Mahmoud, thank you so much for joining us. Inshallah.
Thank you for having me. My respect to your audience, and inshallah, with God's miracle, we still believe in God's miracles. There will be a miracle.
And now before the inshallah, and now before the audience leaves, make sure you hit like and you share and you drop some comments. Tell us what you thought of the conversation, because it all helps with the algorithm in the video, because it gets boosted. So get to work, hit like, subscribe, and start commenting. Cheers all. Have a great day and enjoy tonight. Bye.
Thanks.